What's up, everybody? I'm HoopsandHipHop, and welcome back to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about all of the goings-on during Pokemon Day. That was yesterday. There was a lot of stuff that happened, a lot of stuff they did. Obviously, the new mythical Pokemon got revealed, which I said we were going to talk about last week for this week, and that is what we're going to talk about, but we're going to comment on some other things that happened as well, because there was a lot that went on. And yeah, last week we went into the whole Nintendo Direct situation because I felt like switching things up and talking about something different since there wasn't really a whole lot of Pokemon stuff to talk about, and that was a lot of fun. I really do like to talk about just regular Nintendo stuff from time to time, but it definitely is time to get back into the Pokemon side of things. Before we do that, though, I do need to thank our sponsors because they literally help the show run. They are a big part of what we do here, and they help us do what we do, so they're very much appreciated. And with that being said, today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Tax season is here, and that means it's time to file your taxes. There's good news, though, because if you're a W-2 employee, you can save half off of your filing. All you have to do is call the Tax Defense Group before April 15th, 2020, and mention that you heard this ad on UCast Studios. Millions of Americans will get money back after they file, and you can be one of them. So just call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973. Again, that number is 800-850-7973. And you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. This episode is also brought to you as well by Writer Junkie. Are you looking to make more money in 2020? Because one of the best ways to do that is by having a new resume that can help you get that dream job. Writer Junkie offers affordable, well-written resumes for the low cost of just $145, and they'll even throw in a cover letter for no additional charge. All you have to do is mention that you heard this ad on UCast Studios, and they will get right to work. So go ahead and call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966. And you can visit them online as well at writerjunkie.com. All right, so back to the Pokemon stuff. Like I said, Pokemon Day. There was a lot of stuff that went on. We are going to get into, like, as kind of like the keynote presentation sort of topic of discussion within this wider topic of discussion. We are going to get into the mythical Pokemon Zarude, which I believe now it is Zarude. That is how you pronounce it. I made a video about this Pokemon, kind of analyzing him yesterday, and I was calling him Zarude because that's kind of like how the name looked to me, like in terms of how it was pronounced at first. But after kind of hearing other people pronounce it and looking at the name, just kind of staring at it for a while, I feel like the name is probably Zarude as opposed to Zarude. So that's how I'm going to pronounce it. If they come out, once they actually like put out the movie that this Pokemon is featuring in, and it's in English, and we can actually hear how it's actually pronounced, then we'll know for sure. But for now, I'm assuming it is Zarude. So that's what I'm going with. Anyway, we will discuss him in length and speculate and do all that fun stuff, sort of like as an extension of my video that I did on my own channel yesterday. That is what we're going to get to a little bit later once we go over all this other stuff that happened during Pokemon Day. But yeah, I did want to touch on some things that happened outside of that because there were some interesting things. One of those was the Pokemon of the Year campaign. Earlier in the year, basically, there was a poll that was ran through Google that people could vote for any Pokemon they wanted to be Pokemon of the Year. And essentially, yesterday, Pokemon Day, was the day they announced the top 10 and who was ultimately voted by the fans as Pokemon of the Year. So I wanted to go over that list. At number 10, we have Gengar, which really isn't a surprise because Gengar has always been one of the most popular Pokemon ever. At number 9 is Gardevoir, which isn't really surprising, but it's also surprising at the same time because, like, Gardevoir is, I would say Gardevoir is an iconic Pokemon, but it's an iconic Pokemon for almost all the wrong reasons because when you think about Gardevoir, like, a lot of the times you think about the fan art, like you know the kind of fan art I'm talking about, and unfortunately that's kind of just been Gardevoir's role, like, in life, essentially, for Pokemon, which is really sad. But At the same time, it's kind of elevated it to this higher plane of popularity, which has obviously got it the number 9 spot on this list as effectively the 9th most popular Pokemon currently. So it kind of works out, so congratulations. At number 8 is Rayquaza, once again, not really super surprising. Number 7, Garchomp, not surprising at all. I'm kind of sort of surprised that it's not a little higher because Garchomp is Garchomp, but nevertheless, still expected to be here. Number 6 is Sylveon, which not necessarily like the Pokemon I would have expected to be on here, but seeing it, it's not really like too much of a shock at the same time. Same thing goes for number 5, who is Umbreon, so 2 evolutions on this list. Number 4 is Charizard, only number 4, despite Game Freak just loving Charizard to death, giving it 2 Mega Forms, a Gigantamax form, and its own movie. Like, no, it really doesn't have its own movie. That was a joke. But Charizard is very much popular, so not even being in the top 3 is surprising. And what is surprising is the fact that Mimikyu is number 3. Mimikyu has made it all the way to number 3, despite being a pretty dang new Pokemon. Like, if you pay attention to Pokemon at all, you know Mimikyu has definitely become a fan favorite, sort of an iconic Pokemon, definitely has got a lot of love, but to be number 3, in my opinion, is really crazy. I think, like, I don't think I would have been surprised to see it on this list if it had been lower on the list. It's just the number 3 spot specifically is what's so surprising. I feel like a lot of that, I mean, I know everyone everywhere likes Mimikyu, but I also feel like a lot of that comes from Japan specifically, because I think they're like extra in love with Mimikyu over there, so I feel like that's going on, but nevertheless, really awesome. I also really like to see when newer Pokemon like Mimikyu Gen 7 become this popular. Like, it's really cool to see newer Pokemon getting this kind of love and attention, just because it kind of like, I don't know, when it comes to the whole of the Pokemon like community or world or fan base or whatever you want to call it, it's nice to see some reassurance, even though like it's easy to tell that Pokemon is super successful and running strong and arguably stronger than it ever has. It's always refreshing to see something like that shows there's that much love for a newer Pokemon, because there's always that like constant argument from people who don't know what they're talking about when it comes to Pokemon, that literally just like know Pokemon exists and that's it, and they played Red and Blue when they were 5 and never picked up the games again. There's always those people that are like, the new Pokemon suck, blah blah blah, and even though as an educated person you know that's not true, it's always something that kind of like, I don't know, at least for me, just sort of sticks in the back of your mind, and you're always like, you want people to appreciate the new stuff as much as you do, so it's really nice to see that. That's what I'm going for with this whole monologue. But anyways, moving on to number 2, we have Lucario, which isn't a surprise, and number 1, technically for the second time in a row, we have Greninja as the most popular Pokemon in the world. The reason why I say for the second time in a row is because back in 2016, basically the same poll was taken, but it was just in Japan, not worldwide like this one was, and Greninja won that one as well. So Greninja was unbelievably popular in Japan, but now that we've extended it to the whole world 4 years later, he's still winning, which obviously I believe Japan is still going to have a large influence in that, obviously, because he won the poll there last time, but to see even at a worldwide stage that Greninja is number 1 is really crazy. For me personally, I like Greninja. I think it's a cool Pokemon. I can definitely see why people like it, but I'm not really in love with it to the point where I would vote it number 1. I don't know, like, I'm glad people like it, because once again, it is another Gen 6, like, it's a more recent Pokemon. It is from Gen 6, the Kalos region, which, in my opinion, the Kalos region has the best Pokedex of, like, new Pokemon designs of any region, so this sort of validates that in a way. But yeah, it's like, I definitely don't feel like, especially after this, that I like Greninja as much as everyone else does, but it's still, like, cool and kind of crazy to see that there's that much love for Greninja. Like, it's really, like, I would not expect that. I would expect that for, like, Lucario or Charizard or Garchomp or even Gengar, but Greninja, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy for sure. But nevertheless, very deserving. So with that being said, there was one more thing I wanted to add on to this before we move on, because there was a sort of an extended poll, if you will, that Pokemon Database put up on Twitter, and it was essentially showing off the top 30 Pokemon that were voted from each region. I don't really know how they got access to that information, but they posted on Twitter the top 30 Pokemon that were voted from each region as a part of this Pokemon of the Year. And I just want to say that in the Johto category, every single stage of Cyndaquil made it into the top 30. Typhlosion was at number 4, Cyndaquil was at number 8, and Quilava was at number 24, I want to say. Yeah, 24. So all three of them made it into the top 30, which is pretty dang good, if I do say so myself. Like, yeah, might have not got that top spot, but really we know it's all fixed against Cyndaquil anyway. So the fact that all three of them are at least represented, I'm okay with. I'm fine with that, because I don't think that occurs for... I don't know if that occurs for any other Pokemon. I haven't looked at it yet, but in terms of every single point of their evolution line being there, I don't know that that occurs. I can see for Gen 1, you've got Venusaur and Bulbasaur and Blastoise and Squirtle, but I'm not seeing Ivysaur or Wartortle there. And surprisingly, I'm not even seeing Charmander on that list either, which is, Charmander's there, Charizard is obviously there, but Charmeleon's not there. So yeah, overall, really cool accomplishment from my boy Cyndaquil and his fam. Just wanted to throw that out there. That's really cool. We might as well, since we're here though, go over the top 5 for each region, because that would be pretty fun. So in Kanto, once again, this is according to Pokemon Database, we've got Charizard, obviously, number 1, Gengar number 2, Bulbasaur number 3, Pikachu number 4, and Eevee number 5. That seems about right. With Bulbasaur basically, like, all of a sudden, like, apparently everyone's been closet Bulbasaur fans for years, and they're just all of a sudden coming out of the woodworks, because as far as I remember, Bulbasaur was like the least favorite starter in Kanto by far, and now all of a sudden everyone just loves him. That's a discussion for another day that I've also had on my channel before. I personally think Bulbasaur fans are kind of bandwagon fairweather type of fans, because I know for a fact there weren't this many Bulbasaur fans before. So if you genuinely like Bulbasaur and have always liked it, that's awesome, but I feel like there are definitely people out there that are just jumping on the bandwagon because all of a sudden everyone wants to talk about how much they like Bulbasaur, which I kind of have a problem with, because it's like, you don't be a bandwagon fan. Don't just hop on what's popular. Like what you want to like, and like what you genuinely enjoy, and don't just go for trends. Like, that's personally a pet peeve I have, but that's obviously, like I said, a story for another day. Moving on to Johto, though, before we open up that can of worms. Umbreon number 1, Tyranitar number 2, Lugia number 3, my boy Typhlosion number 4, and Scizor number 5. I think the biggest surprise there would be Scizor, but Scizor is awesome anyway, so it's not really that big a surprise, and then the other 4 are kind of no-brainers. Moving on to Hoenn, we've got Rayquaza number 1, Gardevoir number 2, Flygon number 3, Sceptile number 4, and Blaziken number 5. The Sceptile one, I would say, is probably a surprise, but once again, just like Scizor, not really. What's interesting, though, is that 4, 5, and 6 just barely missing that top 5, is they're all starter Pokemon. So you have Sceptile, Blaziken, and then Mudkip. And then Swampert is at number 11, so really strong starter representation in Gen 3. In Gen 4, you got Lucario number 1, Garchomp number 2, Luxray number 3, Piplup number 4, and Infernape number 5. That is not surprising at all either. Infernape is another Pokemon like Greninja that I feel like I like less than everyone else, just because Growing up, I would say, maybe even now, I'd have to have a long, hard thought about this, but even now, I might say that Infernape is my least favorite of the fully evolved Sinnoh starters. I know for a fact that Piplup and Empoleon are my favorite, so it kind of comes down to between Torterra and Infernape. They're both really good, but I remember as a kid, Chimchar was always my least favorite because I thought it was really weird that a monkey was a fire type, and Infernape was obviously an extension of that. And apparently I was like the only kid in the world who had that thought, because now that we're all grown up and on the internet and we can talk about our childhood like experiences, everyone always talks about how they love Infernape so much, and they always did from the moment they saw it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the anime, because it does have an arc in the anime, which I didn't watch. But overall, it's kind of weird. It's like everyone loved this Pokemon as a kid, and I didn't hate it, but it was definitely my least favorite. So another kind of personally surprising one for me. Before we move on to Hoenn, I would like to remind you guys about the Tax Defense Group and Rider Junkie. If you need your taxes done, you want a deal, make sure to hit them up at 800-850-7973 or on thetexdefensegroup.com. And if you need a banging resume that's going to get you that dream job, you can check out Rider Junkie as well. They will hook you up. Just mention you heard their ad on UCast Studios. Mention you heard this spot. Call them at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online, riderjunkie.com. For Unova, though, the number one favorite Pokemon, which Unova did not make the main top 10 list. So that's going to be kind of interesting because none of these Pokemon were on the top 10 overall. We have Chandelure number 1, Zoroark number 2, Hydreigon number 3, Volcarona number 4, and Haxorus number 5. Now, going over this list, I don't think Chandelure is super surprising to number 1, because I know a lot of people that really like Chandelure a lot. I would have personally put Zoroark at number 1, but given that it's number 2, not super surprising. Hydreigon is kind of surprising, because for me, Hydreigon has always been like amongst my least favorite of the pseudo-legendaries. I know it is a pseudo-legendary, so it's going to get a little more attention kind of just by default because of that. But I always kind of felt like it was sort of the redheaded stepchild of that group, and so maybe didn't get as much love, but that is obviously not the case. And then moving on to number 6 and the Kalos region, or Gen 6 I should say, Greninja number 1, number 2 Sylveon, number 3 Aegislash, number 4 Noivern, number 5 Goodra. This doesn't surprise me at all either. Aegislash was a fan favorite from the get-go. Sylveon obviously was on the list, and as an evolution just sort of gets that. Number 5, Goodra. Goodra is my boy. Oh my gosh, I love Goodra so much. Goodra is like, probably, I don't know, like I've always said that Cyndaquil is my number 1, and then Phantom is my number 2, and Goodra is my number 3. But I'm really, really tempted to just have a tie between Phantom and Goodra because I love Goodra that much. It's just, I love it. It's such a good Pokemon, such a good design. So I'm really happy about that. And then Noivern is like, Noivern's probably in my top 10 too. Like, Kalos has so many good Pokemon. So yeah, none of those surprise me. In Gen 7, we've got Mimikyu, Rowlet, Decidueye, man, I can't see these. These are really small. Lycanroc and Zeraora. I apologize for my bad eyes, or it was just really small on the list. I promise I'm not like going blind. But this list is kind of interesting too, because Zeraora being number 5 is really like, that's kind of surprising, I will admit, because even though Zeraora is a really cool Pokemon, it didn't get any like screen time at all in Sun and Moon. Like, it was released in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and I believe Sun and Moon as well, but it was like 3 months before Let's Go came out. So it was like the very end of Sun and Moon's life. It came out, and when it came out, it was just a distribution event. It wasn't even like anything special. It was just like, here you go, here's your Zeraora. It doesn't get any backstory or anything. You just get to put it in your Pokemon party and use it, and yay. Like, there wasn't any fanfare. And so to see it get that high despite that is pretty cool, because Zeraora is a cool Pokemon. And then Lycanroc, Decidueye, Rowlet, like, that makes a lot of sense. Rowlet is literally spherical, so it's gotta be at least top 3. And Decidueye, in my opinion, is by far the best of the final evolutions of the starter Pokemon. And then in Galar, I believe Galar didn't get any Pokemon in the top 10 list as well, which isn't really super surprising because Galar is so new. People need time to really like soak in these Pokemon and like use them and start to love them and all that stuff, which is like, there are a lot of Pokemon in Galar that a lot of people love. So this isn't to say that, Galar's Pokemon suck or anything like that. Like, that's not the case. I feel like it's just a factor of they haven't been around long enough for people to really enjoy them to the point that they enjoy the other Pokemon. But with that being said, number 1 is Dragapult, number 2 is Toxtricity, number 3 is Corviknight, number 4 is Snom, and number 5 is Alcremie. I would say Alcremie is the biggest surprise here, because Alcremie really hasn't got sort of the fan, like, love, I guess you could say, that literally every other Pokemon on this list has. Snom has basically become a meme and become just like an internet sensation, so that makes sense. Corviknight was always loved from the get-go. Toxtricity is kind of like the Zoroark or the Lucario of Galar, and so it got special treatment. It got special treatment just like from the outset as being that kind of Pokemon in terms of it just being designed from the ground up. So that that's not surprising, I should say, and like it's just cool in general. So yeah. And then number 1 at Dragapult, I mean, this is a no-brainer too. A, it's a pseudo-legendary, so makes sense, it's going to get more attention. But B, this is like the coolest pseudo-legendary we have had in a very long time. Like, this is easily one of the best pseudo-legendaries. I'm still partial to Goodra. I still like Goodra the most, but I would say, like, it's really, really hard to pick the best pseudo-legendary, but it's easily the best one we've got in a long time. So none of those are really surprising. We'll have to see. It would be really fun to do this type of thing like every 4 to 5 years just to see how opinions hold up and change. Because I believe in, like, if you did this in another 4 years, I believe there would be some Galar Pokemon that would be up there. I feel like Dragapult would be I could see Dragapult being in the top 10. I could see other Pokemon from Galar also making it easily, like Toxtricity or Corviknight. Like, I could see it happening, so it would be really interesting to do this every so often. But that is pretty much the list, so that, yeah, we spent a lot more time on that than I thought we were going to, but I thought it was really interesting to just go over all the regions and kind of go over it. Like, that was a lot of fun. But getting into other discussions and topics now, because they deserve to be talked about. We have, in terms of other things that happened on Pokemon Day, there was the Mewtwo Strikes Back movie that's on Netflix now. That's basically the way it came to North America, is through Netflix. Like, this is the first time that it's available in North America, I believe. Which kind of makes sense because the whole CGI thing they decided to do with this movie is, in my opinion, the more I see it, the more I will actually say that it does look good. Originally, it kind of just looked like an HD version of Robot Chicken. I'll probably say it looks better than that now, but it still just is not the way to go for Pokemon. Like, using 3D, like, CGI is just not the way to go. Like 2D animation, anime style, that's a million times better. And the fact that they did that on one of the most iconic movies ever, especially for Pokemon, like, you're just asking to get criticized. So, not really sure what they were going for there, but nevertheless, it's the thing that's happened. And from what I'm hearing, it's at least, aside from the art style change, it's pretty faithful. So it's at least worth watching if you have Netflix. And then what other things happened? I feel like that was like those were like the big things that went on, aside from the mythical Pokemon Zarude, which we're now going to get into because, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was everything. So Zarude was revealed along with a new trailer for the new Pokemon movie, Pokemon the Movie Coco, which it is going to be a part of. And overall, as I said in my own video that I made, I think it's a cool Pokemon. I was kind of like shocked when I first saw it. Like, its face was kind of crazy, and so I was like, oh, this is ugly. But then I like got to like let its design soak into my brain for a few more seconds, and I was like, actually, this is really cool. This is a really cool looking Pokemon. if you want to check out like my, I guess you could say, theory on Zarude and like where it actually comes from in terms of its origins and the possible like lore that it could have within the games, you can go check that out on my own channel if you haven't yet already, because there's some really good stuff there that I'm actually really confident is probably true. So that was a lot of fun to put together, and yeah, it's just a really cool video in general. But in terms of like other, like, I do want to extend that conversation a little bit if we end up having time. But I also want to talk about its role in the movie, because the movie side of this is something I have not discussed at all. In Pokemon the movie Coco, as we can see, especially thanks to this new trailer, essentially what is going on is there's a kid named Coco, and he's basically like a Tarzan type of kid, and it seems like he was raised by the Zarude, because he was obviously abandoned. We don't know how at this point, but he was obviously left somewhere, and then the Zarude took him under his wing. Very much a Tarzan type of thing, obviously. But the other really interesting thing is that Celebi, specifically a shiny Celebi, is a very key part of this movie. Like, it appears in the trailer. It's kind of like the secondary most important Pokemon to Zarude, and there is some time travel stuff going on. Obviously, because Celebi's in the movie, it's an important Pokemon, and it's the time travel Pokemon. So, like, that's kind of inherent, that's kind of obvious. But in the trailer, you also see this Coco kid as a baby, and then you see him as an adult, and this is right after you see Celebi kind of dancing around. So I don't necessarily, like, it's hard to tell exactly what is going on, but there's obviously some time travel shenanigans going on with this kid and Celebi, and how he's aged from a baby to a kid, and there's some stuff going on there, which I definitely enjoy, because even though time travel is a really played out concept in media, it's the kind of thing that you can also do a million times over and have it never get old, at least in my opinion, because it's just such a fascinating concept, and it can be done so many different ways, and it just really adds the right amount of depth and complexity to a story, that even if it's going to be a more basic story, like a Pokemon plotline, for instance, it adds just the right amount of flavor, pizzazz. It's just like, it's like putting some like seasoning or salt and pepper on your dinner before you're about to eat it. Just adds that really nice extra bit of stuff that really just makes it that much better. So I'm excited to see how that ends up going down. It's going to be interesting. I'll probably, like, I usually do not watch the anime or the movies just because it's hard to get into the anime, just the way it's directed more towards kids, more so than anything else, as I've talked about on this podcast before. And so it just doesn't really grab my attention. And when I've given it a shot in the past, like I watched the I watched the I Choose You movie that was put out a few years back, and I did not like it. I was not a fan of it. I didn't really like some of the choices that were made. I didn't like the fact that there was essentially no villain at all in the movie. It was just really weird. I didn't like it, and so I don't know. Like, I keep having faith that it'll work out, but it hasn't proven to work out to this point, which sucks. But maybe I'll give this one a shot. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, the time travel thing definitely does have me intrigued, I will say that. So I might just watch it to see what's going on there. And it would also be awesome if they could explain why the Celebi is shiny at the same time. That would be awesome. So we'll have to see what goes on there. But I think I'm out of time at this point, so I really didn't get into any extra speculation or theorizing about Zarude in terms of like my video that I did and going past that. So if you do want to check that out, I highly recommend going to check it out on my channel. Good stuff there. As far as here goes, I think we got to wrap it up, but I feel like we had a really great discussion. It was fun going over all the Pokemon Day results. So with that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And if you're on YouTube, leave a comment in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. I would also, just make sure you're following because we do this every week. It's really fun. If you want to check me out once again, Hoops and Hip Hop, you can do so on my own channel. And with that being said, I'll be back with another one on Friday as usual. So until then, I love you guys. Thank you so much for your support and thank you for listening. I will see you guys I will see you guys here next Friday. I will see you on my channel tomorrow because I got a new video coming out tomorrow. But yeah, with that being said, we'll be back for another episode next week. Hope you guys have a great weekend and a great week. And until the next one, as always, I will smell you guys later.